This is your Wednesday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy Jim Harbaugh is interviewing day to those who celebrate, also known as National Signing Day, a curious day for a prominent college football head coach to interview for a vacant NFL job. We'll get to that in just a little bit here. We'll get to the Timberwolves, who had a nice win over the Nuggets the other night. We'll get to a big lawsuit connected a little bit to the Vikings coaching search, not directly by any means, but Brian Flores, the former Dolphins head coach, suing the NFL and teams for basically allegedly conducting sham interviews to try to satisfy the Rooney Rule that says you must interview minority coaches for head coach and general manager vacancies. So interesting twist right there. And we'll get to Tom Brady. We ended the last show Tuesday kind of not believing that he was really waffling about retirement, and then about 30 minutes later he announced on Instagram that he is in fact retiring. So maybe we can look back at his career just a little bit. But first, what did I miss? As I alluded to at the start of the show, we got to start with the Vikings again. We'll have Jerry Zgoda on the show here as well in just a little bit to talk U.S. men's national team soccer big match Wednesday night in the freezing cold against Honduras, a World Cup qualifier at Allianz Field. So Jerry will join me in a little bit. But we're going to start with the Vikings today, as we have many times here lately. Conducted their third second interview. That's a hard thing to say. Kind of second interview on Tuesday with Patrick Graham, defensive coordinator with the Giants. Reports saying that Star Tribune report saying he interviewed for 9 hours at TCO Performance Center, and this was after the Vikings had met with Kevin O'Connell and Raheem Morris, the offensive and defensive coordinators, respectively, from the Rams on Monday in L.A. As Ben Gessling and I talked about on Tuesday's show, a lot changed. On Tuesday, they were supposed to interview DeMeco Ryans, but he pulled out of the race, so to speak. And then they added Jim Harbaugh's interview, and they added Patrick Graham's second interview. So Harbaugh is obviously the big one here. A report out of Michigan suggesting that he basically has already been telling people that he is going to take this job, that the job is basically, that this is mostly a formality, that he's coming here to essentially seal the deal. And that would be, again, we've talked about this a bunch of times, but from where we started in this search to where we are right now, that'd be a pretty stunning development because, we heard Mark Wilf talk about the need for kind of a culture change. We talked about players talking about different things they want in a head coach. We all presumed, at least, that it would probably be a head coach that was maybe more of that up-and-coming, younger offensive coordinator type, which Kevin O'Connell, the Rams offensive coordinator, certainly fits that profile. The other two assistants right now that the Vikings have interviewed are both defensive coordinators, but I thought both of them were also very much in the mix. Harbaugh, a different story. A guy with successful head coaching experience, was 44-19-1 in 4 seasons with the 49ers, clashed there with management, but not sure who was mostly to blame for that, but doesn't seem like the collaborator that they were talking about wanting in this role. Seems like more of an outsized personality would immediately come in here and be, the big personality in a lot of those rooms. And, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah is going to have to be very comfortable with that idea if they are going to make this hire. It would be, he would recede into the background a little bit, I would imagine, even if he is very much aware of Harbaugh from their time together in San Francisco. He has to know kind of what he's getting into. That said, the biggest way to job security is to win. And Jim Harbaugh, of the 4 coaches that seem to be the most serious candidates, he is the most accomplished in terms of head coaching. It's just a plain fact, given what he did with the 49ers, bringing them to 3 NFC title games in a row, basically bringing them from nothing to the NFC title game that season without the benefit of an off-season program. You remember the Vikings struggled tremendously that year, and that was Leslie Frazier's first full year as head coach with the labor strife. There was really no off-season. San Francisco goes from, I believe, 6 to 13 wins in Harbaugh's first season, starts a run of success that, again, got them to 3 straight NFC title games and 1 Super Bowl appearance that they nearly won against Baltimore, fell short at the very end. So Jim Harbaugh's accomplishments not in question here. What is in question is the direction they thought they were going, or we thought they were going at the beginning, versus where they are going now, and frankly, where they are right now with the interviewing of minority candidates. They've interviewed 2 black candidates, Raheem Morris, the coordinator from the Rams, defensive coordinator from the Rams, and Patrick Graham, defensive coordinator from the Giants. Now, this is all with the backdrop of what I talked about at the beginning. Brian Flores suing the NFL for discriminatory practices. Brian Flores is black Latino and says basically that a lot of what's going on is a sham. I want to read from the Undefeated, because Undefeated had a great piece on everything that is going on. There's been a lot of good coverage of this so far. Just 2 key paragraphs. It's not that the playing field isn't level for black assistant coaches. It's that black assistants aren't even on the field. When black assistants gather in private or share the off-the-record thoughts with reporters, they often express frustration about their interview experiences. Repeatedly, they allege that teams only speak with them to satisfy league rules, but feelings aren't proof. That's why Flores' suit could be a game changer. Indeed, he has evidence from a text message exchange with Bill Belichick, in which Belichick told him that the Giants had already picked Brian Daboll to be their new head coach, even though Flores hadn't interviewed yet, and that was an accident because he was mistaken in who he thought he was telling Flores about. He thought that he mistakenly told Flores that he was going to be the one getting the job, and he got things mixed up. But now there's that piece of evidence. A lot of interesting tentacles to all of that. It's just, I don't know how that pieces into the Vikings and what's going on with their search, but the optics would not be great of them interviewing Graham on Tuesday, preceded by Morris on Monday, and then this word leaking out that it's already Harbaugh's job. That would not, the optics on that would not be great. So I think that would be a delicate dance. I think you can certainly make the case that Harbaugh is the most qualified candidate in this case, just based on record. But I also think that Flores has a really strong case, and that what he is saying is true. So pay attention to that if indeed Jim Harbaugh is hired. I don't know what would come of that, if anything at all, but I do think that's an interesting piece that will be brought up if he is hired. Now, the bottom line is he is interviewing today, and we will probably know more about this pretty soon. I don't know if he's going to interview for 9 hours or not. Don't know if that's even necessary, but should know a lot more about this by the time we talk again on Thursday.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is playday.
Happy to have Jerry Zgoda on Daily Delivery today. Jerry covers Minnesota United and soccer in general for the Star Tribune, and it's going to be pretty chilly on Wednesday, Jerry. The big match in town is the U.S. men's national team playing a World Cup qualifier at Allianz Field against Honduras. And, they knew when they scheduled this for, early part of February, it could be cold, and they were probably hoping for that based on, perhaps having some sort of advantage. But Jerry, my goodness, it's supposed to be 0 for that match. Let's talk right off the jump about the elements and what that will mean for players and spectators alike.
Well, there's cold, and then there's cold. There's Columbus cold, which was I think 26 or 29 degrees when they played last week there in the first they were playing these 3 qualifiers, 2 at home and the one they played Sunday in at Canada. But that's a big difference than 5 degrees air temperature with a 10, 15 mile an hour wind and a 20 mile or 20 below wind chill. So, I mean, there's cold that they're used to playing. They played cold qualifiers before, but this is a different kind of cold. Just ask anybody who went out and sat through the Winter Classic at Target Field a couple weeks ago.
At least those people, though, like fans and, the players themselves, the hockey players, they're at least kind of used to a colder environment. They've got more layers of protection. Maybe not the fans. I mean, the fans will probably be dressed somewhat the same. But, for people who are uninitiated or who are like, why in the world did they schedule a World Cup qualifier in Minnesota in the middle of winter? I mean, this is kind of something U.S. soccer does, especially when they're playing, some of these warmer weather countries in these qualifiers.
It's all in the name of home field advantage. They go to these teams, in Mexico and in Central America and the Caribbean, and they're playing in the heat and the humidity and at altitude and air pollution and fans throwing batteries, and that's their home field advantage. And here, I guess the best they could do is, one, they put it in the Midland, so you're not going, I think the last time when they didn't qualify in 2018, they had a bad home loss. I think it was Costa Rica, and their fans either outnumbered or at least out-yelled the American fans. And I think they wanted the cold weather because these, Honduras and El Salvador, they don't, they probably have never seen snow or never have felt this kind of weather before. And, and they just, that's the home field advantage. So I think when they booked this, I know the Allianz Field groundskeeper, he did all this kind of research of, what the temperature was on February 2nd, and it was anywhere from 46 degrees to 12 degrees. He said back when they announced the game in November, it could be anything, and I think this qualifies as anything.
I think it does. Beyond the elements, and I know a lot of fans are looking forward to this. I think it'll be a fun environment as long as everybody can stay relatively warm and is dressed for it. But, beyond the elements, this is a pretty important match in this qualifying. The U.S. just lost to Canada, which has already now clinched its spot in the World Cup. U.S., like you said, missed out on qualifying in 2018, really a sore spot in U.S. soccer history. They're currently second in the standings, but they're kind of bunched up. And, Honduras, a struggling team, they cannot qualify for the World Cup. They've already been knocked out, but there's a lot at stake in this match.
Well, you can't lose this one because you can't lose to a team that hasn't won yet, who's, as you said, they were eliminated, I think, on Sunday, their last place, winless. And, I mean, that would just be a crushing defeat going into the final 3 qualifiers in March. To get there, obviously, a win over Canada would have been great. But, the one thing you can't do is you can't lose to Honduras. And, they scheduled this thinking it was the home field advantage, but you wonder at any point, does the cold become the great equalizer? We'll see. I mean, Honduras has got nothing to play for. They're probably just warming the plane up to leave when they're done to get out of here. So we'll see. But any of these qualifiers, it's never usually very easy. I mean, they'll play in El Salvador. I think it was a 1-0 game. So we'll see what effect the weather has. But Minnesota fans, I'm an old timer. I say they've gone a little soft from the days when they used to go to Vikings playoff games out of Old Met Stadium, and no matter what the weather. But they bundled up for the Winter Classic, and I'm sure there'll be plenty bundled up tomorrow night.
Now players were training on Tuesday. It was a little bit more reasonable outside on Tuesday, although starting to get colder by the time they train. Have they said much about playing in these conditions and what they're kind of what they're looking for in this match?
Well, they all have said, well, we've played in the cold before, but like I said before, this is a different kind of cold for anybody who's never been here. You breathe in and you can feel it freeze when it's that kind of cold, kind of all the way up your nostrils. So I mean, that's different than even like England. They play through the winter and all that stuff, and they get some snow, but they don't get or Europe, they don't get this kind of unless you're playing in Russia, this bone-chilling kind of weather. So I know Greg Berhalter, the U.S. coach, says it's all a mindset. That's all it is. So we'll see if it's more than that.
There's a certain amount of fatalism that sets in with U.S. fans, and we saw it certainly early in this qualifying cycle. Maybe they didn't get off to the best start, and then again when they lost to Canada 2-0 on Sunday. If this one starts out poorly, let's say again. Honduras certainly a huge betting underdog. I think I saw they were 13-1 underdogs in this match, and for good reason. But let's say they get an early goal, or if it's 0-0 at halftime, I would imagine there's going to be some kind of murmuring from the frozen crowd, because just knowing what's at stake here and not wanting to blow this chance to get into prime position to qualify, especially after missing out last time.
Now that's a question. Will they murmur, or will they try to lift them up and carry them on?
Yeah.
So, everybody involved over there, hopefully it doesn't come to that they get an early goal and a couple of them, and you get a Honduras team that's just looking for an excuse to leave, to leave early. But that's what makes it interesting. This weather makes it interesting to see how it will, or will it at all, impact what happens on the pitch.
Form-wise, where's the U.S. at right now in terms of injuries, in terms of who might play in this match?
Well, they've got a couple guys out, and you think, they lost 2-0 to Canada, but after the game, Berhalter, basically said, we played great, we just didn't get the result. So he liked the way they possessed the ball. He thought they dominated play, but then they gave up a goal in the 7th minute and the 95th minute, and they left losers with nothing in their hands. So I don't know if that's just the coach, when things go bad, to be the optimist and talk it up, or whether you really believe that. But they've what they do have, even with a couple guys out, they do have the depth on this team. So and we'll see how much they need it to, particularly in the cold.
Yes, we will. That's tomorrow. Wednesday night, 6:30 p.m. at Allianz Field. Jerry will be there. You'll be trying to stay warm, I would imagine. Let's shift gears, Jerry, a little bit to talk some Minnesota United before we go, because their season, they're in training right now. They've been down in Florida for a while. They've even been playing some exhibition preseason matches for, it feels like their season ended not all that long ago, but here we are again. Anything off season of note to get into as we kind of think about 2022 and where they left off in 2021, since we haven't really chatted about that for a little while?
Well, they took comparatively in Florida, the bad weather with them. The first several days they were there, it was cold and rainy and really windy. And Adrian Heath, who's lived there for the last 7 years, says he'd never seen it like that. So I think it's moderated and gotten better the last couple of days. But they went down there thinking they're going to train in the sun and 70, 80 degrees, and they had a couple of days that certainly was better than here, but not what they anticipated. But they always like to go down and get on the grass. You can't do that here when you're playing in the bubble up on the turf. So they get down even if the weather's a little blustery, then they'll come back. They played their first game on, Saturday against Chicago. It was a scoreless draw, so it was pretty uneventful, as Heath said. And then they've got one on Thursday against Orlando, and then they're going straight to the airport and flying home. They're getting, a look at some of the kind of the young, faster guys they've added through the off season. They're still missing a couple guys. I don't think Robin Ludd's back with them yet. Michael Boxall's still playing a qualifier for New Zealand somewhere in the world, so he's still on his way. They're still waiting for the kid from South Africa. They signed along Wange, or I'm having a hard time pronouncing some of the names of the guys they added. Just a good thing that I'm not an announcer or broadcaster. So, but Adrian seems like the shape his guys came back in and what he's got. But we'll see what happens when they put them all together. They come back for a week from Orlando, and then I think they go to Portland for about 10 days and play 3 more games in kind of a round robin sort of tournament out there. So, but as you said, the opener's coming fast. It's coming week earlier this year because of the World Cup in November in Qatar. So it's coming February 26th at Philadelphia. It'll be here before you know it.
Yeah, it's only a few weeks out. last season they reached the postseason for the third consecutive year, but I would say, their season ended more abruptly than they would have liked with that, first round playoff exit. They really leaned on veterans, it felt like last year, really kind of added some pieces. There's been some additions and subtractions this season already, this offseason. How do you, as we think about this year's roster, how do you think it sets up for them so far, at least, until they potentially add more, in these various transfer windows as well?
Yeah, because they still have a couple, as many as 3 to 5 more guys that he says that they're going to add. I mean, one of them is Luis Amarilla, the striker who was there 2 years ago. And the other guy is Honduran, who's playing against the U.S. tomorrow night. And I think it's pronounced Curvin Arriaga. And then I think there's a domestic player they added, and then maybe even a couple more. And I don't know if any of those guys are guys they're going to aim towards that MNUFC 2 roster, their second team that they're starting here, play at the end of March or not. But as you mentioned, you can tell by their offseason moves that they said, we've got to get younger and faster. I mean, they have to kind of work the salary cap, which really isn't going up much, but they keep adding players to it. So, out goes Ozzie Alonso, out goes Ethan Finley, and one more that I'm missing here. And in comes, young guys, a couple of them under this new under 22 initiative that gives you a salary cap break for signing young, promising players to contracts.
Last thing for you here, Jerry's talking about Minnesota United. I mean, I think we talked a lot last season about Adrian Heath and his job status. It seems like he's obviously come through that offseason just fine. Feels like the stakes still, though, are fairly high for him this season, even after making the playoffs 3 years in a row.
Yeah, let's backtrack a little bit. Jan Gregush, that was the third guy that I'd forgotten that has gone elsewhere. But as far as with Adrian, yeah, he got a contract extension a year ago, but I think that only runs through this year. So unless they do something, before the season, that's going to be a little bit of a factor to take note of. But this is his second or third year now that he's had control of the roster pretty much, and we'll see. I mean, last year it was just a hard year from the beginning when they start 0-4 and they were just climbing up the hill and couldn't get. You really got to try to get yourself a home field advantage in the playoffs, and they couldn't do that. So we'll see if they can start better here from the very beginning. See how much of those young guys they can use, how much those guys become kind of development players for the second team, and see what they can get out of this front four that they put together last year. But really they kind of had to work all season to kind of come together with Ludd on the right and Fragapani on the left and Uno and Reynoso. If those guys come, and if Uno starts playing like what they expected from him, he was sort of like Ludd in his first year. A lot of chances, didn't convert, wasn't very productive. Fans said, what they go and get him for? And then Robin in the second year really kind of came into his own, and I think they're kind of hoping with a full training, full preseason that Adrian Unu does the same.
Sounds good, Jerry Zgoda. Appreciate the soccer knowledge on Daily Delivery. Stay warm Wednesday night. Enjoy the World Cup qualifier, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Yeah, I got to go look for my Sorels and my choppers.
You better get them out, baby. Thanks, Jerry.
All right, bye.
Good stuff from Jerry Zgoda, just noticing the forecast now that we're a little closer to the start of tonight's game. Looks like it'll be a degree or two above zero. Maybe they even lucked out a little bit in this case because it could have been worse, although the wind chill will probably make that feels like temperature more like -10 or -15. That is not ideal soccer conditions, and we'll see. Like Jerry said, does that benefit in any way Honduras, even though they're not used to at all playing in such cold weather? I don't think the U.S. is used to playing in this cold of weather, and is that a neutralizing factor when one team is better than the other? We will find out Wednesday night at Allianz Field. Let's turn our attention to the Timberwolves for a little bit. A 130-115 win over the Nuggets on Tuesday night. Interesting game because a lot of different players contributed. Anthony Edwards did not do much at all. I think he had 5 points in the game, and they scored 130. Didn't really need him. They had a lot of other things going in that game, including Taurean Prince. Big game for him. He had 23 points off the bench and was a plus 22. Got good play again from Malik Beasley. Got a good effort from Jordan McLaughlin with D'Angelo Russell out. Karl Anthony Towns had 24 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals. He's been going pretty well lately, and just really the bench told the story of this game. Really took it over in the second quarter, in particular, as the Wolves expanded their lead from just a small lead to a 20-point lead in that second quarter. But another good win. Let's hear from Chris Finch, who's really doesn't always, the praise from Chris Finch isn't always. I think he's genuine with his praise, but he doesn't dish it out in overly large proportions. And so I thought this was an interesting quote from him after this game, which got the Wolves to 26-25.
I think, I've said many times, this team really likes each other. They really root for each other. They're fun to be around. They have fun with each other. It's just like everyone's game had to settle into a role. And I think we're kind of there. But as we know, things change quick.
And that was an important win in the big picture, too, because as the Wolves start thinking about the playoffs, again, it's a ways off, still 31 games left in their regular season, but Basketball Reference gives them a pretty good chance of getting there right now, 88%, and that's the straight-up playoffs, not just the play-in there. Basketball Reference has them basically as a lock to get at least into the play-in right now, has their most likely record at the end of the season at 44-38. A lot of that driven by a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way, particularly in February. And Denver is one of those teams they would try to catch to get into that top 6. Right now, it looks like they would be more in that 7 range, which would put them into the play-in portion. Need to win at least one of those games to get into the playoffs beyond just the play-in. But good win for the Wolves. They've been going pretty well lately, kind of muddled through a tougher stretch when a lot of people were out and they were playing some tough games and got through it pretty well. And all of a sudden now look at them go towards the playoffs, and we'll see how far they can get. Let's finish with the cooler. Tom Brady made it official on Tuesday, announcing on Instagram that he is in fact retiring. I don't want to get into the greatest of all time debate. It's those types of things are kind of fun, but they're also kind of reductive. I think Brady's a great quarterback. I don't think he's the greatest passer I've ever seen. I think Aaron Rodgers maybe is the greatest passer I've ever seen, but certainly Brady's accomplishments, when you win 7 Super Bowls, you put yourself in a certain category. What I want to do at the end, though, is I just saw a Twitter thread about different local papers being petty with Brady's retirement. Tweets out of New York saying Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback to ever lose 2 Super Bowls to the Giants, or Tom Brady, who lost 2 Super Bowls to the Giants, is retiring, stuff like that. Just finding the local angle. The local angle in Minnesota could be that he never lost to the Vikings. He was 6-0 in his career against the Vikings. But if I had to craft my petty Tom Brady tweet, it would go something like this. Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, who also has a lower career passer rating than Kirk Cousins, is retiring after 22 seasons. And that is indeed a fact. Tom Brady's career passer rating, 97.6. Kirk Cousins' career passer rating, 98.6. Do what you want with that stat. That will do it for today. Good stuff coming up on Thursday and Friday. I'm sure we'll have to talk Vikings again with Harbaugh interviewing today. Should have Sarah McClellan on one of those shows as well to talk Wild at the midpoint of their season. Thanks again so much for joining me. I'm Michael Rand. Be back at it again on Thursday.